Infinite cash-on-cash return. Is that actually possible in an environment today where most rental property investors are targeting 10, 12, maybe 15% cash-on-cash return if they're really lucky? It's absolutely possible to get infinite cash-on-cash return if you have a combination of the right deal and the right financing. And so I'm going to go through an example, a real-world example of exactly how you can do that. This deal was actually brought by a member of my first vacation rental investment blueprint program. In full disclosure, he didn't actually get it under contract. Somebody beat him to the punch, but this is the type of deal that members of my program are doing every single week. And it's a perfect example of how you can structure a deal to get infinite cash-on-cash return if that's something you're interested in doing as well. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into this deal, but I want to mention, if you're interested in working with me personally to find and buy an investment just like the one I'm about to walk you through, then you can go to the link that just popped up at the bottom of the screen and set up a call with me and see if my program is a good fit. All right, so first things first, here is the location of the property that we're going to be talking about today. So this is located in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, which is just north of Milwaukee. So you can see here that it's north of Milwaukee, south of Green Bay. Driving distance to both, right at the southern tip of Lake Winnebago. And this is the type of area that I think works perfectly for this strategy. Just outside of larger population centers, driving distance with some local attractions like a lake, like Lake Winnebago. So that's the location. Then we'll look at the listing itself. So you can see this is a fully rehabbed 2-unit property. So you can see as we scroll through the pictures, everything's been totally updated in this property, and they're asking $225. It's 5 bedrooms, 2 baths. So one of them's a 3-bedroom, 1 bath. One unit's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, just over 2,000 square foot. So you can see your money goes a really long way. And Fond du Lac is not like a metropolis, like the epicenter of vacation rentals, but it's got a lot of positive features, including really low purchase prices for the nightly rate and occupancy that you can get in that area. So in order to figure out what the nightly rate and occupancy is that you can expect, the next step is to go to AirDNA. Now, I don't pay for a paid version of AirDNA. I use the free version. With the free version, you can put in any market that you choose and any town, and it will tell you the average for the entire town. If you pay for the paid version, you can put in a specific address and it'll give you analysis for that address. I've just seen that to be way off. It's an AI generated analysis, and people depend on that to buy, and then they find out that the numbers are actually quite a bit different. So I look at the averages, and then we'll dive into the actual comps on Airbnb after this. So you can see that there's 38 active short-term rental listings in Fond du Lac. You can see which channels those are listed on here, and then you can see what the average occupancy rate is. So on average across all 38, they're rented out just over half the year at 51% occupancy, with an average nightly rate, again across all of them, of $272 per night for the nights that they're rented. So obviously that's going to be a lot higher in the summertime when people are visiting to go to the lake and that sort of thing, and then it'll be a lot lower in the wintertime. And there's more information down here. You can see like when's the peak and when is the trough of occupancy. So January is 29% occupancy, July is 63% occupancy, but it averages to 51% throughout the year. Then we go to Airbnb itself. And again, I don't like to get an analysis from AI. I'd rather actually look at each comp and compare each comp to the subject property. So I put in the address of the subject property, which I already did, and on the map it shows you where that property is located in relation to all of the comp properties around it. And so then you can just start with the closest properties, and you can start clicking on them and just seeing, are they similar? Which ones are the most similar? Pull each of them up. And if you're actually going to buy a property, I recommend looking through every single comp. And I'll show you exactly what I do as I look through the comp. So the ones I start with are the ones that have the most amount of reviews, the highest ratings, closest to the property, as similar to the property as possible. So I think this one has 28 reviews. Ideally, you're looking for 100 reviews or more. That would be ideal, but 28, they've been around a little while now. And it's a similar property in terms of this would be like the super listing. So What we're buying is a 2-unit property, which, one's a 3-bed, 1-bath, one's a 2-bed, 1-bath. But then you get 3 listings out of that. You get a listing for each unit, and then you get a super listing, or what we call a super listing, which is the entire property together. So you're really trying to comp both scenarios, like an individual unit or apartment, and then the entire property together. And so this would be a good comp for the entire property. It's 5 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, very similar to what we're going to have with our property. So the great thing about having these small multi-unit properties is that you get the versatility of having a house similar to this, where it's a large property that can host, this hosts 10 guests. You could probably host 12 to 14 in the property that we're considering looking, or the subject property that we're analyzing here. But it's going to be very similar to this type of property. And so you'll be able to host large groups in the summertime when large groups travel, and then small groups in the individual 2 units in the wintertime when it's typically smaller groups. So what we're looking at is the listing quality initially. So is it going to be similar to what we've got, which, you should have a high quality listing with professional pictures. So that you're probably going to have a very similar type of listing to this. And then we scroll down to the calendar and the reviews. And what the reviews tell us is when people stayed, what they loved about the property, what they didn't like about the property, what makes this property perform well. And that's what you want to replicate. And then you can also see, are there gaps in the calendar? To really understand occupancy rates, you can start to look at when the reviews were left, how many people are staying, and look at trends across multiple listings, not just one listing. So you can see this was left 1 week ago, this was left 2 weeks ago, then February. So looks like they had 2 stays in March. Again, this is just on Airbnb, so there could be other platforms that they're booking on or doing direct bookings. So it's not like a set in stone gospel, but it's telling if there's a trend of, there's only 1 or 2 bookings across all the comps that you look at in the month of March. March is probably going to be a very light month in terms of occupancy. So you can go back through and see all the reviews when they were left. And if you're seeing like 5, 6, 7 reviews in a month, that means the occupancy really picks up in that month. So you're looking for trends, looking for what guests like and dislike about other properties. Then you can go to their calendar and you can see when bookings are taking place. So right now we're in relatively slow season for this market. And so what you want to see are the next couple of weekends booked at least, because that's typically in the slow season what you see is it's mostly weekend bookings. You'll get some weeks here and there, weekdays here and there. But if they're priced correctly, then you'll see a few upcoming bookings on their calendar. Sometimes you'll see 0 bookings, and that's a good sign that they don't understand pricing, or there's something wrong with that listing. Maybe their settings are wrong, they're too strict on their cancellation policy, or their cleaning fee is way off the charts, or something like that. And so you just want to be aware of what it is, what the nightly rate is that's going to get you booked. And so you can look forward then at future months, and then you can look in the opposite season. So June, July, August, those are the peak seasons in this market. You can see they already have bookings, which is a great sign. This is what you want to see, that there's some bookings, not the whole summer booked up. If the whole summer is booked up at this point, probably price point's a little bit low, but they've got some bookings, so they're priced competitively, and so you can check out, different days to see what the price in the summertime looks like compared to the price right now. So they're $270 for that weekend, $525 for 4th of July weekend, which you'd assume is one of the highest weekends for that market, $250 for weekdays in July. You can go into August and see a weekend in August, $464 per night. So you can start to get an idea of what the average nightly rate is in the peak season. Hey, real quick, the sponsor for today's video is the #1 banking platform built specifically for rental property investors. I am constantly looking for the best tools to manage my properties and my finances, and in my opinion, Baselane has built the ultimate all-in-one solution. Baselane allows you to set up unlimited virtual bank accounts and debit cards for better visibility in your cash flow and finances, and you can also do other things like sign leases with tenants, collect rent, keep track of your books, and review your analytics. And finally, it's all in one place. Plus, they have the industry-leading annual percentage yield, which is just a fancy way of saying you make a lot more money on the money that you have deposited in your Baselane bank accounts. So I personally use the platform along with over 40,000 other real estate investors. So you can use the link that just popped up, and it's also in the video description below, and open as many business bank accounts as you want, and it's all for free. The link is baselane.com/Kirby, which is my first name. That's BASELANE.com/KIRBY. So from that, then after you look at all these different comps, then you're going to go over to the numbers. And this is where it gets super, super interesting. So let me expand this a little bit, make the numbers a little bigger here. So on this vacation rental analyzer tool, which you can download, I'll put a link to it in the description of this video as well. But you can just fill in the gray cells, and then it automatically calculates the calculations for you in the yellow cells. So initially on the first page, you're just going to put in all the general information. What are you buying the property for? What are your general closing costs after repair value once it's all furnished and fixed up? Annual property taxes, that's on the listing. Annual insurance, you can put in a rough estimate there, a rough estimate of repair costs, furnishing costs, and then what's your financing look like? So this individual who's in our first vacation rental investment blueprint, they were going to use a DSCR loan for 75% of the purchase price, which is readily available to anyone. Pretty much anyone can go out and get a DSCR loan as long as you're buying a property that cash flows. A DSCR lender is going to give you 75% of the purchase price. So then you say, well, I need the other 25%, which is, so the bank will give you 168 of the 225 purchase price, but then you need the other 56,250 plus 20,000 in furnishing costs and 10,000 in repairs. So this individual didn't want to bring that themselves. And so what they did is they went to a private lender, which can be anyone who has a 401k, a IRA, somebody who just wants to make a double-digit return, and they said, okay, I'll give you 12% on your investment if you'll give me $100,000, and it will be backed by this asset, by this high cash flowing short-term rental, and you'll have a mortgage, a second position mortgage on this property. And that is super attractive to a lot of people, because if you think about it, the average return in the stock market, if you're in mutual funds, is probably around like 8%. So if you can get a fixed 12% and have a tangible asset underneath that kicks off a ton of cash flow, that's a really great position for a lot of people to be in. So that's what they did. And so they had a private lender give them the other 100,000. So now if you're tracking, they have $0 out of pocket in this deal. So let's look at how it performs. So very conservatively, I always recommend putting in the most conservative nightly rate and occupancy in the range, because you're always going to have a range of nightly rate and occupancy. You're never just going to, it's never going to be an exact number. You're always going to have a range. So pick the most conservative end of that range when you're filling in your numbers. And if the numbers still work, then you know you've got a fantastic deal. So that's what this is. So they picked 200 a night for the larger unit in the high season, 175 in the for the smaller unit. Then in the low season, it's 135 and 120. Now the occupancy that they selected for those two seasons is 70% in the high season and only 30% in the low season. So they don't have to have very many nights booked to actually hit these numbers here. So it's an average of 50% occupancy. So half the time their property is sitting vacant and they're still achieving these numbers. So that means they're going to make $61,868, plus they'll charge a cleaning fee, which will be an extra $14,600 of revenue that they're going to pay eventually to their cleaners. So $76,468 is their gross income annually, which equates to $6,372 per year on this property that's just over $200,000, which is pretty incredible. And then you can see how their expenses come through. So their first mortgage, the DSCR mortgage, it's a 30-year fixed rate, so the payment is $1,253. Then that second mortgage of $100,000 at 12%, if you do the math on that, it's interest only, so that's $1,000 per month, because they're paying $12,000 total on $100,000 borrowed, right? 12% interest, $12,000. So monthly, they'll make a payment to their private lender of $1,000 interest only. Then their insurance is $100 a month, property taxes, cleaning, utilities, lawn care, consumables, maintenance. Like, you want to make sure you include all of these costs, because even though like maintenance, you might have several months where there's no maintenance whatsoever required on your property. But then you might have a furnace go out, or you might have to have a roof replaced. It's going to happen. So you should have a percentage in there for maintenance or CapEx costs, because it's going to be an expense. So if you put that in there as a set aside, or an expense that you still count on a monthly basis, then your total expenses are $52.20. So if you look at how this calculates, then here's the deal calculations. Let me increase the size of this. So the total income on the property is $76,000, like we talked about. The total expenses are $62,000. So that leaves them with a monthly cash flow of $11.53 on this $225,000 property. Now, that would be great cash flow if they had put down a decent size down payment and paid for closing costs and furnishings and all that. But keep in mind, they didn't pay for any of that. So that's $11.53 after paying back their first loan and their second loan, all the maintenance, the cleaners, everything, all their expenses. And so since they didn't invest any of their own money, you get an error when you try to calculate cash on cash return, because there's no money into it. And cash on cash return is how much money am I making every month on the cash that I actually invested in this deal. So it's an infinite cash on cash return. On top of infinite cash on cash return, they're making $11.53 per month that they're actually sticking in their pocket. So in theoretically, you could replicate this over and over and over again, because it's not costing you any money out of your pocket, and it's a great way to build income and wealth over time. So even though a lot of people think that infinite cash on cash return is impossible, or they have to save a huge down payment before they can purchase a property like this, I'm doing deals like this all the time. We're in the middle of 2 properties right now that we just purchased, 2 duplexes that we're setting up in our target market. And every single week, members of my First Vacation Rental Investment Blueprint program are getting deals done just like this. So like I mentioned, if you're interested in working with me on a deal similar to this, you can go to the link that just popped up. You can set up a call with me personally, and we can talk about your goals and see if the program is a good fit for where you want to get to. So I hope to talk to you soon. Thanks for joining me for this video. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.